Time now for Money Power Politics. And tonight we are talking tariffs and American tech companies. That is a new one ahead of tomorrow's big announcement from Trump. Europe is trying to figure out how it's going to hit back. The Washington Post reporting one option is putting tariffs on digital services provided by companies like, guess who? Apple, Google, and Meta. Remember those big CEOs that stood next to Trump and speaking of Meta, the Wall Street Journal reports Mark Zuckerberg himself is asking President Trump for a favor. Europe is expected to hit Meta with a major fine and cease and desist order related to how it uses personalized ads. Meta wants American trade officials to respond aggressively. Joining me now, Peter Goodman, global economics correspondent for The New York Times, and David Gura is still with us because Peter is wearing a swacket tonight, one of my favorites. He gets to go first. It's
from Europe, I'm sorry to say.
Well, there you go.
Get it while you can.
If Europe goes ahead with tariffs on digital services, would this not open up a whole new front on this trade war? We haven't even talked about that yet.
Whole new front. I mean, when we talk about trade, we pretend that the only thing we trade is manufactured goods as if we're still living in 1960.
Totally.
Digital is where the action is. Everyone knows this. And Europe can essentially say, okay, Mr. Trump, you're obsessed with bilateral trade deficits and you're focused on the fact that we sell you a lot more factory goods than you sell to us. Well, let's talk about digital. Let's bring Facebook, Google, these companies that are definitive and give us this sense of American greatness and innovation. Let's hit that. Because then we get into real money and we get into a whole new power dynamic, which is precisely why Zuckerberg has carefully cultivated his relationship with Trump. If you didn't think there was a quid pro quo in his mind, or at least a need to make sure that he's on good terms with the emperor who presides in Washington, you now know Mr. Zuckerberg would like something from Mr. Trump, and that's help with the European.
And I would like to all collectively pat ourselves on the back because we talked about this at the inauguration and after Meta settled for $25 million. It wasn't just making life easier for Meta. It wasn't just doing away with potential investigations happening here. We saw this coming. The European regulators have a huge problem with Meta, and Mark Zuckerberg wants Donald Trump's help.
They care an awful lot about fairness, and they care an awful lot about privacy. And that's
shocking.
Shocking. That's animated any number of competition cases we've seen brought by the European Commission over the last many years. And that's what's happening here. They're taking a very close look at Apple, taking a very close look at Meta. And they don't like that there's no option for you able to use that site without either having to pay money or give away a lot of your personal data to this company. So we are seeing in these reports Mark Zuckerberg making an overture to the president to say, look, do something to stop this from happening. I think that if we step back, what's kind of astonishing, picking up on what Peter said, is just the way that Europe is presenting a very united front against all of this now. They're going to go ahead, pursue these cases as they have, regardless of what politics is. I think that applies to the way that they're approaching these tariffs as well. There's a lot of unity there in terms of what their response is going to be. I think that the U.S. government, President Trump, is likely to be surprised based on what I've heard from the EU foreign minister in an interview that I did with her, just about that level of resolve that they have in the face of what the U.S. is doing when it comes to, yes, competition, but to trade policy as well.
Is Donald Trump inclined to help Mark Zuckerberg here? I mean, not to be blunt, but what's in it for Trump, right? This is all about what Meta needs, but there's no upside for Trump in helping Zuckerberg.
We don't know because we don't really know what Trump's objective is in this entire trade war. Right?
To get paid.
Well, there's the centralized presidential authority and monetize it by giving people good reason to show up at Mar-a-Lago and pay whatever it costs to get a seat with the president. There's that. There's the potential that this is a prelude to some series of grand bargains. Now, if that's the case, Zuckerberg could be an interesting trading chip. Or it could be about raising lots of revenue, which no economist actually believes is possible, but the Trump administration keeps telling us, we're going to get $6 trillion in revenue through these tariffs. Or it could be about bringing production back to the United States, in which case Zuckerberg doesn't really do anything for Trump. But, if Zuckerberg manages to personalize this such that Trump feels that the Europeans are trying to strong harm him, and Zuckerberg positions himself to benefit from the inevitable Trump backlash to that, it could be as simple as that, because Trump's emotions certainly do seem to play a role in his policymaking.
Can we talk about Newsmax? Newsmax premiered, they had their IPO in the beginning of this week. This is a far-right news organization that was founded by a golf buddy of Donald Trump. And somehow Newsmax, the shares have surged 180%, okay? It is now more valuable than Fox News, okay? Somehow this has now become a meme stock. What do we make of this?
It feels very memey. And the aforementioned golf buddy is now a billionaire, one of the richest men in America as a result of this. So you'll have to wait and see what happens here. But we saw this play out many times over the last couple of years, that there's been this kind of meme interest in the stock and seen it explode. But I think what you point out is what's most striking to me, that this is a company that, at least on paper, is more valuable than Fox, more valuable than Warner Brothers Discovery, than Paramount. It is an upstart by comparison.
Since Monday, it had a 1,500% rise. Like
more than $250 a share.
This makes absolutely no sense. Anybody who actually follows fundamentals. So couple that with Newsmax going up this much, right? And the rest of the markets being in turmoil over tariffs. And almost no CEOs, bank CEOs, big names in Wall Street speaking up in any way against the tariffs, against what's happening in the markets. What does that tell you about the climate we're in? Because I can tell you from my sources, they've said, we've never seen bank CEOs in a climate like this quiet. What do they think? They think that really they're scared that the president's ire will now turn to them when it comes to executive orders, just like it has with law firms.
I mean, you put these two things together. It tells you that the president, who is a successful reality television star,
very successful,
is running a highly successful program. This is a popular program. It's good content. And the Newsmax price reflects the fact that a lot of people out there, look, what's a meme stock, right? It's a story. It's not about fundamentals. You don't need a slide rule. It's just a story. Well, the story is that this is a movement, and it's here for the long term, and people are watching, and Newsmax is positioned to deliver a good chunk of this programming. And in terms of what this means for Trump, it means that he is getting the message out, and people are paying with the currency he understands the most.
Let me talk about a different message. David, you just did a really important interview with the president of Princeton, specifically about cuts to funding to universities and what all this means. What did you learn? I think we actually have a soundbite of it. Let's play that.
This pact between the government and research universities, which goes back to shortly after World War II, has been fundamental to the excellence of American research universities, and it has contributed tremendously to the prosperity, health, and security of our country. And that pact has depended on the idea that the American government will come to universities and ask them to do research that is in the interest of the American people. And universities have done that spectacularly, making both the country and the universities stronger.
A pact of the past.
You know, Chris Eisgruber there spoke about what we've seen over the course of the last week, federal government freezing funding to Harvard, this deal that they made with Columbia University. And what he was getting at there is that universities across this country have done so much fundamental research that's been so crucial for innovation and inventions in this country. He brought
part
up
of
the
American excellence.
Part of American excellence. He said, you know, Princeton has a new Nobel Prize winner in physics. He did something in the 80s that's now foundational for the way that AI works. We wouldn't have known that at the time. But that research has been so crucial to where we are today. Who would fund that in the private sector? Who would make that kind of commitment? So while we see the president using these funding cuts as leverage to have these universities make deals, there are very real consequences to places like Princeton, which do so much crucial, important research when it comes to science and math and other things as well. And he's speaking out. I give him a great deal of credit. There are a lot of administrators who are not right now in this moment. They don't want to draw attention to themselves. They don't want to attract the attention of this administration. But he's making the case that the work done at these universities is really important, and more people need to pay attention to the fact of what's on the line.
And just think for a moment, what is it like for universities that don't have the massive endowments that schools like Princeton do? It's devastating.